holiday is rushing inexorably to an end. And James Hanscom is joining us to talk about schools built on ethos, uh, state and public school partnerships, talking donkeys, poetry, Taylor Swift, and words, words, words.
Live from the end of the Metropolitan line, this is The Breakfast Show with Tabitha McIntosh. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good morning again, everyone. Right, before we start, I have to warn you that the next door neighbours have chosen today to have some kind of very noisy service done to their house. A yellow machine was brought in, I saw to my horror, half an hour ago. Not sure what the machine is for. It remains unclear what the machine is doing, but it seems to involve periodic clanking, a lot of periodic clanking. Let's just call it narrative being constructed. So the problem with this particular narrative is that it also seems to involve drilling extensively into the wall directly behind my computer and mic. So we might have to abandon everything if the narrative gets too loud, but hopefully they'll restrain themselves. So today, before James comes on and we've listened to the news and words from our sponsors, just updating you on where I was last week and what's going on. I was in Berlin. I actually did an international flight. My college roommate, who is a very important woman at the European Parliament, said, let's just go to Berlin. She's got an apartment in Berlin. Let's go there. So she got me the tickets and then left the bureaucracy up to me, which, if any of you know me, you understand that this was a bit of a fatal flaw in her plan. It did work out, but as her former East Berlin comrades have since said, getting the paperwork ready to fly out of the country and then back into the country is somewhat similar to the procedures that used to be involved when you were traveling across the Berlin Wall on train or transit of some kind. Here's the amazing thing about Berlin. I thought you have to get a test to get back into England. So I thought that would be terribly difficult to arrange. But what Germany has done is arrange for every single restaurant, or, as far as I can tell, manicurist or flower seller or man walking randomly down the street is allowed to set themselves up as a deliverer of Schnelltests, very quick tests. And so you can get one literally anywhere. There are people lining up to go into sort of outside nightclubs. One night we were there, and the Schnelltest place is just opposite. So they could get a test, wait 20 minutes while having a delicious vape or cigarette, and then go into the club having tested negative. Quite startlingly efficient and absolutely nothing like Britain. It's been a long-term goal to visit Berlin, someone is saying. It's an absolutely amazing place. Amazing. Can't recommend it highly enough. Especially if you go with someone who knows the place, who's been there. My friend Ellen, she's called Ellen Robson, who had to become German once Brexit finally happened. So she's now an official German person. She was there when the Berlin Wall came down. And it's amazing to walk around it with someone who knows history. And there's an impossibly dizzying amount of history in Berlin because it's entirely made of absences. Obviously, the absences caused by the Nazis, the Holocaust, are a staggering invisible dimension added to the city, and the city marks them all over the place. It's as a sort of architectural meditation on the meaning of absences and the scale of them. I was talking to Adam Boxer yesterday about the inadequacies of the Holocaust Memorial, because it attempts to map that kind of scale, but also is interacted with by tourists in a not terribly meditative way. Let's say that. The amazing thing I saw this time, this is our third visit, was at the Spandau, which I'm now just going to obnoxiously say in a German manner, Spandau. At Spandau, they have 100, 200 years worth of naughty statues, someone called it in a review. So statues that previously were erected with great pomp and circumstance, imaginary histories of the nation of Germany as constructed in the late 19th century to go with the 1871 unification of all of the German Confederated States into one country that were then all torn down after the First World War and the abdication of the Kaiser. And they're all at Spandau, which have all been put on display. What they do with those statues traditionally is bury them, either break them up and bury them, or just bury them as embarrassing secrets that lie under the mud. So they're all missing noses. They look, as Patrick Craig said, as if they have serious cases of syphilis. They're missing hands. And it is amazing what constantly happens in Germany, consideration of history, of the memorialization of history, and then what it means to tear that history down. You were allowed to touch some of the statues. So if you consult my Twitter feed, you can see me feeling up a giant head of Lenin, which fascinatingly was found by a documentarian, but then couldn't be moved to Spandau for a while because it had become the home of a species of endangered lizard, sand lizard. Very exciting. And I'm sure there's an important metaphor there. Now, the man we're having on today, James Hanscom, is the king of metaphors and the king of wordplay. So that's one of the reasons I've rambled here a little bit, because he is also the king of purposeful rambling. I've just been reading this morning his collection of sort of the archival and autobiographical and narrative history of the school he's the principal of, Harris Westminster Sixth Form, which is called A School Built on Ethos. And what I was thinking when I was reading it is, it really is, and this is not a diss on Doug Lemov, I hasten to add. I know we have many Doug Lemov fans in the audience, as always. It's sort of the diametric opposite of something like Teach Like a Champion. So what Teach Like a Champion and those others very purposeful guides do, like Rosenshine's Principles or any of those things, is they start with observation, and then they consist of abstracted, generalizable principles, often with snappy names, which is the bit I like to laugh at, which is unfair, really. If we need a shared language, it's not unfair. I take it back. I'm just being nice. Pastor's perch, do now, cold calling. No, so easily iteratable, copyable, implementable things for teachers to do in the classroom. So a school bit on ethos instead consists of, well, you know what? I'm just going to read a bit of James's introduction so he can tell you for himself. So the chapters of this book are therefore to be thought of as stories or parables whose characters are not heroes to be copied, but totems to illustrate an idea and from whose mistakes and triumphs lessons can be learned. I thought about trying to distill each chapter into a few bullet points and give you some brass tacks to go away with. But even here, I found myself pulling away from being too prescriptive. Trying to make the ideas precise and universal was like pinning mist to the wall. And so the final thoughts sections are more impressionist, brass tacks painted by Monet. In my next book, I will channel Dali and have surreal commentaries to terminate each chapter. Tom is saying that Pastor's perch gets a mention after 7 minutes. I win this morning's sweepstakes. Yeah, my deep and implacable loathing for the phrase Pastor's perch is quite the thing. And I think I would like to put against Pastor's perch mist nailed to a wall. So how does James manage to make such a successful, beautiful institution full of people who are purposeful, ethically driven, wanting to replicate their own success in the classroom, in conversation constantly with Westminster School, the great public school, who they share, practice, and observe each other's lessons, learn from each other, while still retaining this idea of an almost flaneur-like approach to narrative, walking through what's happening, doing it narratively, doing it in the most impossibly wordy way. I can't even begin to tell you how densely full of references every single thing James and his teachers write is. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about. But first, we're going to listen to the news. So here you go. Here is your news from Gail Glenn.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. In England, a new study carried out by the Mayor of London's office has discovered that more than 3 million children attend schools in areas with toxic air pollution. It has also highlighted that 99% of Londoners live on streets which have shown dangerous air quality and are 4 times more likely to attend schools in areas with pollution levels above World Health Organization limits. A form of particulate air pollution, which is produced by vehicles, industry, and by burning wood and coal, has been found to be of significant danger. PM 2.5 has been found to be prevalent in schools attended by 3.1 million children. Research has shown that children in the most polluted areas had on average 5% less lung capacity, and that those exposed to the worst air pollution are more likely to be deprived Londoners and from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said, "I'm doing everything in my power to stop young Londoners breathing air so filthy that it damages their lungs and causes thousands of premature deaths every year. This is why I'm expanding the ultra-low emission zone later this year. I want to make sure all London meets the World Health Organization limits for particulate matter. But I can't do it alone, and I want to work with government to achieve this goal." He added, "We can't sleepwalk from the health crisis of COVID back into complacency over the major impact of toxic air on everyone's health." In Scotland, the government has been accused of desperation for announcing talks with local authorities to deliver laptops and tablets to every school pupil. The Scottish Conservative education spokesman, Oliver Mundell, said, "Nicola Sturgeon made a huge song and dance about promising free laptops and devices to pupils during the election. It now appears these plans have barely got off the starting line." The SNP left thousands of pupils without access to devices during remote learning, but now has the cheek to pat themselves on the back for merely entering discussions with councils. Miss Somerville said, "Every child has the right to an education, and we believe that means an education supported and enhanced by technology. This is a vital aspect of an education system in the digital age, which was clearly demonstrated by the pandemic. This is a hugely ambitious programme of work that will build on efforts to tackle digital inclusion during the pandemic. These early talks with Scottish councils are a positive step towards delivering this commitment." This has been your daily education news briefing.
Creative resources made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsia puzzles and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TTRadio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
And we're back. Okay, if James has managed to work out the a little bit fiddly way to call in, if you could do that, James, that would be superb. And while we're waiting for him, I will just tell you, one of the first things I'm going to ask him is why he loves tricolon crescendo so much. The man loves it, addicted to it, can't get enough. So the ethos of the school is the first tricolon crescendo he came up with: ambition, perseverance, legacy. And the term names very nicely: remembrance, resilience, celebration. He is also a fiend, like Hamlet, for polysemy, which is technical definition time, people. The coexistence of many possible meanings for a word or phrase. So if you know your Hamlet, if you're addicted to hating Hamlet like I am, or addicted to loving Hamlet like so many people inexplicably are, then you'll recognize that the very first things Hamlet does on stage is a bit of the old polysemy. Nay, I am too much in the sun. Aha, ha, ha. See, it means, hey, okay, I hope that's you. Hello.
Hello? Hello.
Is that you, James?
This is me, James. Yes.
Fantastic, because I have to say your username gives no indication that that's who you are.
I have no idea where that username came from. I don't understand technology.
So it looks like you just key smashed. Like, I know I'm going to be KCMK2 something something something. Yeah, fair. Yeah, I put it to you that you're addicted to tricolon crescendo and polysemy. What do you say to that, sir?
I plead guilty on all three accounts. I blame a classical education.
And yet you're a math specialist. It seems very unfair that you should be able to reach into my field of specialty and pluck from it so extensively.
Well, it's one of the joys and one of the challenges of being a math specialist. The joy is that once you can do maths, everything else seems easy. And the challenge is that nobody's interested in talking about maths. So we can talk about poetry all day, but as soon as we start talking about group theory, you're going to lose listeners.
I'd like to pretend that's not true, but I think you're right, absolutely right. So yeah, let's go to the ethos first of all. Like I said, I've been studying your book this morning. Ambition, perseverance, legacy. Why are those three words your ethos?
That's a really good question, and I think in the book I'm very vague about that. I had to start somewhere. Harris Westminster started, or my time with Harris Westminster started in the summer of 2013, and the school had no building, no policies, no staff. It had a mission, which is still its mission, to offer an outstanding academic education to the ordinary and disadvantaged young people of London. but it didn't have anything else. And I needed to get hold of something to build on. And so I needed some words. And I thought, what do I want? What do I want from me? What do I want from students? What do I want to tell staff is important? And those were the three I settled on. I think they're good ones. I think that ambition sets the framework, says that we're not going to be contented with anything really, but certainly we're always looking to the next thing. Perseverance is the acceptance that it's going to be hard. And legacy is really important to me. I don't want to spend the best years of my life creating a school that turns out really successful jerks. I want the world to be better.
That anticipates some of the questions I'm going to ask you about. We both ended up in Oxbridge and then the Ivy League, and the idea of really successful jerks is quite crucial to both of those social constructions. All right, so I did send you some questions beforehand, so I'm going to stop being cruel and asking you questions that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you. Let's start with the first thing I wanted to ask you. So Harris Westminster sixth form as a model of state school excellence. My the college friend I was visiting in Berlin, she went to Hills Road Sixth Form College, which is obviously an outstanding model of, some people call it an Oxbridge factory, but that very much takes kids from the entire county and very much from the public and private school system, as well as the state school system. How are you different? What is your model of state school excellence? Talk to us.
Well, I've tried to learn some things from Hills Road. My wife went to Hills Road, so I know some of the things that they did some number of years ago. I think that the big thing that sets us apart from all of the other super selective sixth forms is that we have this focus on the most disadvantaged, that our admissions policy is written to prioritise students whose homes do not have the economics that go with academic success. And this is what won me over to the project, in fact. I said that they didn't have any policies. The one policy they did have was their admissions policy. And I'd spent the last few years doing admissions for the school I was teaching at as a deputy head. And so I know how to write an admissions policy if you actually want to weasel out of what you claim you're doing. And I sort of suspected that the admissions policy would be something where it was going to favour the middle classes and they'd be able to get round it whilst claiming that they were doing the right thing. And then I read it and I thought, you know what? This is the real deal. These are people who absolutely want to set front and centre providing for the disadvantaged. And I think that's key to everything we do. It's at the heart of the way that we operate, and it's what sets us apart, I think.
Yeah, and completely different. So certainly in the grammar school in Buckinghamshire grammar school system where I live, what you have is a phenomenon that gets talked about a lot in the Telegraph and Times of parents who are in the public and private school systems quite convinced that their children will be discriminated against upon application to Russell Group universities, and therefore seeing the sixth forms as a way to hack, looking like they come from state schools. Yeah, there's a lot of weird workarounds and cultural assumptions that go on there. So what is then, I think you've just made it already, the counter to the argument that I regularly see you having on Twitter? You're very patient. You have it all the time, that your institution is too selective, that it somehow is like the grammar school system.
I think that it's a reasonable challenge. I think it's one that I should be having all the time. And it's one that I should be prepared to answer. Because if you look at the statistics for 11 plus grammar schools, they are not very good. In fact, I mean, terrible is the word for students with disadvantage in the area. I think that 16 plus is different from 11 plus. And I think that what I get into is then a philosophical conversation about whether any kind of selection is allowable. The pragmatic answer there, and I think that education needs to be pragmatic, and I talk about ethos and I talk about vision and I talk about holding really close to those things, and I do. But I think that we also have to operate in the real world. These are actual young people with lives that need to be functional. And the pragmatic answer is that you can only do what you can for the students in front of you. And no school takes all students. So I hear about schools saying, well, we take everyone and you don't. You go, well, no, you don't. There are 13 million school students in the country and they do not fit in your building. You take some of those. And the question is, how do you choose which ones? We had 2,300 applicants this year for 300 places. I can't fit more than 300 in the school without sort of going double decker in the classrooms.
Which you might consider. Yeah.
Well, I know it's an option. We're looking at it. And so how do you choose? I think that I've taught in a variety of different schools, a huge range of types of student, huge range of types of school. And I enjoy it all. And I think I can teach to any kind of student. But I've always had a special kind of affinity for the very bright students. They get me. They think my weirdness is amusing. And so if I'm directing my energies to have the biggest impact I possibly can, then it is with the very bright. They deserve a challenging, enriching education that pushes them as far as they will go. If they end up getting 7s when they could get 9s, if they end up getting A's when they could get A stars, then they're being let down as much as less academically able students would be if they miss their potential. So that's what I say to that. I think it's a good challenge. I think it's one that needs to be kept answering. I don't think that Harris Westminster is amazing because it gets big numbers. I think that you'd expect it to get big numbers. We get a lot of press attention because we get big numbers, and that sort of misses the point as far as I'm concerned. What makes it excellent, what makes it interesting, what makes it worth reading my book, please read my book, what makes that worth doing is our curriculum, our teaching, and particularly that ethos. And it's not just those 3 words. I think lots of schools have got 3 words. I think it's that we've taken those 3 words and everything we do is centered on that.
Absolutely. And I think I can help you expand some of the discussion there about entry. Is that I know you're going on more than just results, right? You're looking for academic potential in, well, at least I read an article in which you said you're looking for academic potential in of children who may have underachieved for other reasons because of the circumstances of their lives. So what is that process? How do you try and sniff out academic potential?
It's a really interesting thing. It's one of the things that I've learned is how hard it is. And I've come to the conclusion that it's not possible to write a tutor-proof test. And I've done this through discovery learning. I've tried really hard and asked really clever people, and then I've done it and I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't really work. So we have an entrance exam that we've worked really hard to pick out potential and to be about thinking rather than knowledge. And it is about thinking rather than knowledge, and it picks out people who've been taught to think. But we use that as a sieve. So it cuts out students who are not close to the borderline to be accepted into the school. So it reduces our numbers from 2,300 to about 800. And then what we do that really works is we have an interview. And everybody knows that if you're not really careful with interviews, what you end up doing is selecting for people who read a lot. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to select for people who had academic potential, and I wanted to make sure that as far as I possibly could, I was eliminating the impact of home background. And so what we do is we sit them down for 10 minutes with a subject specialist. So they choose their subject and we put them in front of a teacher of that subject. And we ask them questions that they don't know the answer to. So we try and teach them something using a Socratic method. And we see how quickly they learn, how quickly they cotton on. We can see how good they are at the stuff of that subject. We can see whether they like being faced with difficult questions. So one of the interesting phenomena is you say, why is history brilliant? And they say, history is brilliant for these reasons. And then you ask them a question they don't know the answer to. And they say, well, we haven't covered that. And you say, well, I know you haven't covered that. That's why I'm asking you. I don't want to know what you know. I want to know what you can think about. And they say, well, I don't think that's on the syllabus. And they're not interested. Whereas some, you'll say, what's great about history? And they'll go, I don't know, I'm quite good at it. And your heart will sink because that's a terrible answer. And then you say, okay, so let's talk about Byzantium in the 14th century. And they go, I don't know anything about Byzantium in the 14th century. I say, I know, isn't it great? And they go, yes, tell me. And that's the kind of student that you want.
Yeah. So essentially, that is the Oxbridge entry process, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's exactly the Oxford entry process.
Yeah. I'm not claiming this is my idea. I've stolen it.
No, but I mean, that's really interesting. Because one of the things that schools who are not used to sending or preparing students for Oxbridge interviews, one of the things the students don't know when they go in is that they're going to be asked things that they don't know the answer to. My friend Jake was asked, he was given a bone in his zoology interview, just a big random bone. And they said, what do you think this bone is for? What do you think it does? And of course, he couldn't possibly know the answer. They wanted him to look at the bone and infer and talk and see how his mind worked, which is not for everyone. It's What would you say to the idea that that's too, I don't know, confrontational? Does it suit all students? What do you think?
I think that, what do I think? I think that it should suit all students I think it should suit all young people. I think that, so this gets on to one of the things I'm really passionate about. And I think that, curiosity is a superpower, and that young people who've been taught to be curious have a huge advantage over anyone else. And what I'm trying to do is to engage their curiosity here, to put them in something where they don't know the answer. And I love that idea of the bone. I'm going to try and find some bones. And so she said, what is this? And they go, I don't know. Can we try and work it out? Can we think about this? And I'm very sad that there are young people that has been knocked out of, and it certainly is true. And I think that one of the interesting things about Harris Westminster, compared with somewhere like Oxbridge, is that we are very clear that we're in the business of taking chances. So particularly on disadvantaged students, if there's a little bit of a glimmer of maybe they've got something here, we will try to take them and then try to teach them the things they need to know. And big on that list is curiosity. And so one of the things you're going to ask me about later is our Cultural Perspectives programme, which is utterly fascinating. But this is additional classes that students take every week in year 12, and they choose from a menu, and the teachers teach the things they want to teach. So this is a great thing for teachers. So if there are any teachers listening, it's a fun reason to come and teach at our school. So we've had a cultural perspective on the geography of Antarctica, on mansplaining feminism, on the Persian Empire, the synthesis of aspirin, breeding fruit flies, 6 easy-ish steps to an unsolved mathematical problem. Huge range of stuff. Yeah. And one thing that we put on is a course that I run that's called Mr. Hanscom's Cabinet of Curiosities. And we direct students into that. If we think they've started in year 12 and are lacking in curiosity, who don't understand this idea, we put them in this group. And I talk about a huge range of different things that I think are interesting and amusing and worth investigating, and try to persuade them that there are things outside their subject that are worth wondering about, that asking questions is at the heart of a successful and enjoyable life.
Yeah, in my household, we call that rabbit holing. And we spend all day doing it. Like any one of us might at any moment go, I've just found out about, and then, yeah, it's just gorgeous. I've written down some notes while you were talking. So we got curiosity, intellectual discovery, joy of ignorance, right? Joyful, Socratic questioning. Is this not discovery learning?
Yes, it absolutely is. I don't see any problem with that.
I love you so much right now. Okay, yes, no one's willing to say that, but there is a role for discovery learning. Got it. Okay, carry on. Justify.
So I think that people talk about trads and progs, don't they? I think I'm definitely a prog. And am regularly slated on Twitter for being an arch trad, and I just I just don't think it matches my philosophy or my behaviour. So I think that the way I have learnt predominantly has been to try things as hard as I can and decide whether they're any good, particularly in my teaching. So. I remember APP came in when I was a head of department, and assessing pupil progress, you had to give them a tick on 83 billion different skills. And so I tried this really hard, and I set up a test that was going to do this, and I worked out how we were going to do it, and I went through it, and I got to the end, and I thought, this is really interesting data, but it's taken me 4 days, and it's not worth it, so I'm not doing it anymore. And this meant that for the next 6 years, when everyone else was wrestling with APP, I spent my time going, no, it doesn't work. We're doing something else. And I think that there's real power in that. I've really tried it. I've really been through all of this, and I've worked out whether it works and what it costs. And if it doesn't work, why not? So I think there's a lot in there. I think that doing that every day in your classes is something that I have tried, and something that is too much like hard work. It's not efficient. It isn't a way to teach a lot of good lessons. I love it when I get a really good opportunity to do it. So when I see something coming in the scheme of work where I think, yeah, they could really do some investigation here and come to this themselves, I think that's a great opportunity to jump on it and give them a different kind of learning. But most of my lessons are me standing at the front telling them maths, because that is a really efficient way of doing things.
Martin B is saying, I love questioning in the basis of teaching, big on Socratic nonsense. Does that make me a prog? Right, I'm going to shout out to Samuel Elliott, ASBO teacher here, who has really informed my thinking about this in nonsensical arguments we have on Twitter. Whereas I actually think that what we're describing as progressive, that model of Socratic questioning and stuff, is the most traditional and the most elite. So there's something interesting there about how discovery learning is ending up being reserved for the most selective and highest end of the students. I don't know. There's not necessarily an area we want to go down, but that leads us nicely to public state school partnerships, which I'm shocked to say I didn't even realize that Harris Westminster was in a deep romantic relationship with Westminster until yesterday. So explain that.
We're basically married. So the school is set up as a partnership between the Harris Federation and Westminster School. That's the formulation of the school. And I am sitting in the middle of it, holding it all together, which is like a spider, yes. Well, not very much like Shelob, like a nice, friendly spider. There's a webcomic called Questionable Content that examines the idea of what if AIs were robots walking around in our societies. What would that be like? One of the AIs that they have is a purple spider that gets very upset because everyone's scared of it because he's really lovely and just wants to give everyone a hug. So I think I might be like that purple spider.
Terrifying and also
just really trying to make everyone happy and work together. Not hugging, I don't do that.
Good. It's disgusting and wrong.
It is. Eliminate that. So we're really close to Westminster School geographically, which means that things work a lot better. There are a lot of ways in which the private sector is a different country. It's a foreign country. They do things differently there.
I was going to use that line. I think I've got a horrifying feeling we might have all the same collection of random quotations in our heads. Anyway, carry on. It's a foreign country. They do things differently there. Continue on.
And they are incredibly supportive. They've provided a huge amount of intellectual property, and all of our schemes of work are built on what they gave us to start with. And we've changed them because our intake is different. And our goal is to have a different intake but the same output. That's our goal. And I don't claim I'm quite there yet. But
pause there for a second, because one of the conversations I have on Twitter a lot is this allegedly different curriculum that grammar school and public school children access. Now, I know grammar schools do exactly the same thing as everybody else in the state sector. Having been in one, having sent my kid to one, having been in one myself, it's a different intake. Is the difference there? What's different about the curriculum at Westminster? Is it different?
So they are very good at treating the subject like a subject. So if you are studying maths, then you're studying maths. Whereas I think in some schools you can be studying maths GCSE and maths A level. And there's a huge amount of similarity, right? They covered the syllabus over there, and students do well at exams. But the focus, the way of thinking about it, is we're here to learn maths, and there's a whole bunch. I keep saying maths, but it could be history or English. We can say English if you'd rather.
I would rather. Yeah.
Okay, then. So we're here to study the world of literature, and there's a huge wealth of things that people have written, and some of that is amazing, and some of it, like Hamlet, is just a disaster.
Thank you.
I quite like Hamlet, and although it's too long, it needs cutting.
Exactly. It's never put. Have you seen the Kenneth Branagh version?
It's just too long. It's
4.5 hours.
Yeah, what was he doing?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the later J.K. Rowling's. They just need a better editor.
Yes, and everything Stephen King wrote after Misery. But
well, I've never read any Stephen King, so I can't help you there. I know. I'm told that they're scary, and I don't like scary books. I like friendly books, like Lord of the Rings, really. Where was I? I was talking about the Westminster curriculum. So the idea that you might say, is this on an exam? It's just alien to them. And it's not alien at Harris Westminster. The students think that it's the kind of thing that they should be asking, and we have to mock them thoroughly until they stop it. And so it's something that's a difference between the two schools. That at Westminster it just doesn't come up, whereas with us it does come up, and we have to say, well, obviously that's a boring question. Why would anyone care about that? So that's one thing, and I mean, my learning is amazing thing is really what they believe but don't encapsulate quite as wittily.
Because you're a witty purple spider in addition to being a purple rubber spider.
I think so, yes. Well, certainly I aspire to be.
Your computer is beeping at you. Martin B says, what about the idea that the elite schools can get away with inquiry learning and the sort of passion for knowledge, and it's not on the spec because the intake often has tutoring to manage the knowledge side of it?
Yeah, sure. That's a concern. I mean, I think there are huge advantages to being advantaged. I think there are huge disadvantages to being disadvantaged. I think that one of the things that Harris Westminster shows, and this is I think really exciting, and when we set up, people called us an experiment, which I thought was very harsh. But if you want to think of us as an experiment, then what we're trying to do is say, can you do this with ordinary and disadvantaged students? Can you take students from ordinary comprehensives, some possibly not great comprehensives? London does have one or two of those, and we get students from there.
Mine, obviously.
No, yours is excellent. And can you take those students and offer them this enriching, Socratic, driven, ethos-focused environment, education, and make a success of it? And I think fairly conclusively over 7 years, the answer is yes. Yes, you can, and this is one way of doing it. And I think that we back away from doing it with our ordinary students because we're scared it might not work, because they don't always embrace it. I mean, I've talked to you about my cabinet of curiosity. Quite often I have students coming into that who don't really want to be there. I had one student a couple of years ago who spent the whole of my first lesson with his head on the desk. I mean, absolutely 100% refusing to engage at all. And I mean, all the way through our time together, he was really hard work to get to do anything. And at the end of a cultural perspectives course, they have to write a response. They have to put a piece of work together that says what they've learned, what they feel about it, do something. It doesn't have to be written, the whole range of things they might do, but writing a few paragraphs is normal. And he didn't do that. And I said, why haven't you done it? He said, I said, well, you're going to do it because, I mean, you've been asked to by the principal, and refusing point blank a reasonable request from him it doesn't go well for students. So you're going to do it.
Spider. He's going to paralyze you and suck the juice out. Yeah.
You should be scared of me, right? And so he did. And what he ended up writing was that he was sorry he'd missed out on this opportunity. That he could see that what we'd done was interesting, and he knew he hadn't responded very well to it. But he had learned some things and was really excited by the things he had paid attention to. And I think that's really important.
And I think that goes back to the way I introduced you as the value of intellectual flânerie, right? Being a flaneur of education. So to anyone who's not obsessed with weird early 20th century French constructions, that's just a walker, someone who walks around and thinks and observes, and it's directionless. The importance of the directionless there and curiosity, because you will end up somewhere. You will end up being driven. I have to say, I run my classroom exactly like that. We spend an awful lot of time going, wait a minute, shall we have a look at martyred pictures of Saint Agatha and what exactly she's holding on her plate? And here's why.
Yes, I saw that thread.
Yeah. Amazing, right? And yeah, I do. It works. And actually, I think the beauty of English specifically for OCR, I can't speak to the other ones at A-level, is it's quite directionless. At the end of the day, to use a sort of footballing tenor phrase, they have to write about 2 books in some vaguish way. And it's up to us to provide a huge, sprawling, gorgeous, curious curriculum of things. Anything can be on there. It's very kind of teacher and curiosity driven. So it lends itself to that. And we adore it. Other subjects are inferior to English, I feel, is one of the things we're going with.
I mean, I think that's a view, certainly. It's difficult to prove geometrically. I think that if I was to do an A-level now, so when I retire, I have my eye on coming back to school and doing some learning. I think I would come into the A-level English literature classes. They're always absolutely fascinating. I love the idea of English literature that you're reading a text and you're trying to understand it, and then you're trying to find the cleverest thing that you can say about what has been written. What is clever? There's and you don't get that in maths. In maths, you have to solve a problem. You're not challenged to be the cleverest you possibly can. There's actually a problem for you to get to. And just before
we have pieces of flair from Office Space. Flair and originality is built into the marking criteria from GCSE, whereas say in the American system, originality is not required until graduate school. We want it from 16-year-olds in English.
Quite right too. Just before lockdown, I had to cover an English class because our English teachers were all laid low with the lurgy. And it was a lesson on Antony and Cleopatra, which is something I haven't read. But they've been working through it and they're very excited. And they'd got to the final scene with Cleopatra and her asp. And I was absolutely fascinated by the clown that came in. Well, you've got your drill.
Just ignore the drill. Yeah.
And so you've got this incredible scene where Cleopatra is being completely arch and winning at life. I'm about to have to commit suicide, but she is obviously the best, cleverest person in the whole world. And she demonstrates this by saying to her handmaid, and now we are ruined, and years hence we will be put on stage for people to hear about, with a boy in a dress playing our part. And just the way that demolishes the fourth wall, and you've got the entire audience going, yes, we believed you were Cleopatra.
Right,
we are those idiots who are just sucked into how brilliant you are. And then you have the clown comes in, and the clown is clearly just there as a vehicle to transport the asps. So they were rehearsing. They're doing their dress rehearsal, and they get to the line where Cleopatra claps the asp to her dress, and the actor goes, "But where's my asp? I haven't got it." And the director goes, "Well, there's no instruction for the asps coming on. How are the asps getting here, Will?" And he goes, "Give me a minute." And instead of just saying chuck a basket of asps on the stage, he writes this character of the clown that comes in bearing the asps and makes some jokes. And that character steals the scene from Cleopatra. From Cleopatra, who is the queen who has just mocked the entire audience, this clown comes in, this pointless character who's only there as a stage direction, comes in and steals the scene. And I think that is genius.
Well, yeah, and I was thinking about Hamlet at the end of Hamlet, who again I despise the character and the play, where he's done this absolutely ignominious nonsense throughout the entire final scene. He's lying there dying for 12 years. What to do? And he says, "Tell my story" to Horatio. Like Horatio's got nothing better to do with his life. Tell his story. And then when Fortinbras wanders in and takes over the country, because Hamlet, everyone, is a terrible, terrible prince, right? Let's all notice that. Whole country is overrun colonially the second he's vaguely in charge. And Fortinbras says, "We'll put them on a stage. Let's build a platform where we can put these bodies as a story." Yeah, fantastic. Fourth wall breaking is the best. Right, so but public state school partnerships, we've asked about that. We're touching on your model of enrichment at A-level now. There is a lovely bit that I've pulled out of your book here. If I'm going to lean forward towards the drilling, and hopefully you say you're talking about, and I think this goes directly to my issues with some iterations of direct instruction versus Socratic questioning. You ask, could a computer be programmed to pass A-levels? Well, I suspect it could. I suspect that at a basic C grade level, the questions are routine, the explanations required are straightforward, and most of the essays needed could be memorized. But I think that to get full marks, to get an A star, you need to properly understand. You need to be able to think around the question. You need to be able to bring something interesting and original to the analysis. Do you think that we are shifting potentially into too much of a computer-based learning the criterion to pass exams system?
I sort of don't. I think the direction of travel is the other way. What I'm doing that in that bit of that assembly is I'm explaining to the students about what we call mechanics and purpose. And that is at the heart of our assessment policy, which I have described elsewhere as a work of towering genius, not very modestly. And the idea is that in every subject you have a reason that you're studying. So you study maths to solve problems. You study English to understand people and their thoughts and their feelings. And
wrong. That's psychology. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know why you do your thing. I mean, you read books because it's fun.
Do you know why? Truly, because we like to find penis symbolism.
Okay. So the reason you're studying English is for penis symbolism and pictures of tits.
Exactly.
And but in order to do that effectively, you need to learn what a verb is and why it can't dance at the centre of a noun. Bite me. And to do the maths, you have to learn what Pythagoras' theorem says and why the hypotenuse is longer than the other things. And so we have the purpose, we have the thing that's at the heart of the subject, the actual business of the subject, and then we have the stuff you need to know. And both of those are really important. You can't do one without the other, but they are quite different. And so when we grade students, we give them a grade for purpose and we give them a grade for mechanics. And this was...
that's really fascinating. I'm stealing that. Okay.
Please steal it. I think it's really clever. So it's something that I'm still not modest. So it's something that I came up with in 2014, railing against my experience as a maths teacher, that all of the maths teaching focus is on the mechanics. It's all about, can you do task X? Do you know Pythagoras' theorem? Rather than, can you solve this problem? And I felt that was disadvantaging students, that it wasn't even enabling them to get the top grades at A level, which is sort of the minimum standard I expect from teaching. And so I wanted to make sure that we were focused on that aspect of maths particularly. So I've written this entire assessment policy for the school in order to make sure that maths teachers teach problem solving, which was potentially a little bit self-centered. And so I went into the school with this, and
Hey, let's pause for a second. Potentially your entire system of education is very self-centered, but I see no problem with that. Anyway,
okay, excellent, yeah. Good. You're just scared of the spider, aren't you? And so I showed it to my vice principal, who was an English teacher. And he said, yeah, we can make that work. I'm not sure I see the point, but yeah, we can make it work. He was excellent at that kind of thing. And so it got shared around the school, and all the teachers bought into it in the first year because everyone had signed up to this crazy new school on the grounds that they quite like listening to my nonsense. And so they went along with this. And then a few weeks into term, my vice principal came to me and he said, "You know your assessment policy?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I thought it was basically nonsense. But it turns out it's brilliant because I've just gone into a lesson and I've taught something that's been entirely mechanics based." Because his experience was students were coming to him just wanting to do purpose, just wanting to say, "Oh, it's a metaphor for death." Rather than saying, well, it's in iambic pentameter, and you can see that on this line he breaks the pentameter because he wants to make you feel less easy about the situation. And we can see that from the words, what's happening, I don't know.
Yeah.
But and being able to say, right, we're going to do mechanics today, had transformed the way he was able to show students what was important. And that is what I think is brilliant about that dichotomy between mechanics and purpose, is that it emphasizes what is important to students, and it says that both are.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's wonderful. It's a bit like, I think I call it unicorn points when we're going to the purpose thing. Like, right, here's all the basic stuff. Now, how are you going to be a unicorn? Which always makes everyone happy. I should tell you that my kitten has now decided to attack everything to do with the desk, in addition to the potential drilling. So, right, I'm really interested here, and again, going back to ego, which I think is incredibly important for education and elite education, especially. You've got, so I want kind of, I had this phrased as, there's the drill. Tell me if you can't know me. Your thoughts on cultural capital, but I'd actually like to, what I call it is swagger, which is celebrating and indulging cleverness. So student of mine who is just finished her first year at Oxford reading English literature. I had her in year 8 to start with. Very, very quiet girl. Wonderful. Just the most wonderful human being who ever lived. And eventually I used to send her down to year 13 classrooms to do stuff to challenge her or make her write stories using her synesthesia. She saw words with taste and color. My name, by the way, is purple and tastes of plum.
Very nice.
Exactly. I'd win on that one. But at some point, I just went and sat next to her at the back of the room and said, "Right, we're gonna tip our chairs back and put our feet on the desk, Hannah. We're gonna practice swaggering," and then just made her do that for the next 5 years. So you've got this wonderful bit in what the purpose of your assemblies is, where you say we use them for fun, to enjoy being clever, and to give students the opportunity to enjoy being clever by picking up on allusions or callbacks. I love that, the opportunity to enjoy being clever. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that that is something that the private schools do really well, right? I mean they are good at swagger, and that in state schools it's harder, and it's hard for clever students. I think in a lot of places, I think they hide their cleverness, and I think that part of that is schools in general not valuing clever enough. I think we've backed off emphasizing it, feeling that we don't want to alienate students who find school difficult, and we don't. I mean, that is absolutely something that we should have at the forefront of our minds.
Probably we should think about those children too.
No, this is really important. But we are vehicles for education. We are here because we believe learning is amazing. We believe that knowledge is powerful. We believe that curiosity is incredible. And I don't think we say that obviously enough as a culture. And when I'd say this kind of thing on Twitter, this is the kind of thing gets me told off for being a trad, isn't it? But I think that what I've wanted as a school is to overcome that. I've wanted to give students who've tried to hide their intelligence the freedom and the encouragement and the permission to just be as damn clever as they possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. So the last time I was observed very cruelly, just after we'd all done the teacher assessed grades, what the observer observed in my classroom, in my year 12 classroom, was that the kids, I think we get to the point where we're literally applauding a particularly good reading. There'll be a whole like, whoa, mic drop. And then, like we love the clever. We love the shiny clever points. And that's gorgeous feeling, because it gets quite competitive too. And that just raises the swagger level of everybody in the class. I adore it.
Absolutely. The idea that we are working together to create cleverness, but competing with each other to show off our cleverness is exactly the right spirit, I think.
So we both had quite similar educations. Well, I went to a grammar school, you went to a comprehensive, but then we both went to Oxbridge. We both went to an Ivy League afterwards for graduate school. What's your take on the difference between or anything about that very elite educational world? Let's demystify it or mystify it or spider it up.
Okay, so I found school easy, and it did absolutely nothing to diminish the size of my ego. Which explains a lot about me now, if I'm honest. And then I went to Oxford and I found I was ill-equipped. I had no idea what to do when work got hard. I had no idea that sitting down and trying it for 2 hours would be a good idea. And that's
twinsies, exactly the same thing. But actually, because I do English rather than a real subject, that didn't happen to me until graduate school. And I found out that I didn't know how to work. Just literally didn't know how to work. How do you do this? I know how to write an essay at the last minute, like after 3 pints while chain smoking. And I know how to swagger like that. But now that I actually have to build up a body of research, I had to start from the beginning.
Yeah, and everyone else learned this when they were 11, right? And is going, you are so thick. And going, yes, I know. I know. I'm sorry. So I found that hard. And the idea that you could go and ask your peers for help was entirely alien to me, because I was the one that people came to ask for help at my school.
So very humbling.
Well, I mean, just almost cataclysmically bad. So we had this thing called Warden's Collections, which is like a university version of a parents' evening, but without your parents and with the warden instead. And had these at Easter of my first year, and I went in, and my tutor, who is excellent man, and who I love very dearly, said, Mr. Hanscom has a first-class brain, but will be lucky to get a third-class degree.
Oh, look at that. And the balanced Augustan sentence with which he dashed your dreams and hopes there as well. Yeah.
And I thought, A, ouch, and B, I'm not having that. And so I had to turn round the way that I was approaching my studies and had to learn to work hard and to learn to take advantage of my amazing peers instead of shunning them on the grounds that they were probably stupid. Because it turns out that Oxford doesn't take stupid people. So I'd made an error there in my judgment. So that was Oxford. And then I went to Harvard. And it's really far. I mean, this is fact number one I want to tell you about America. It's much further than you think it's going to be.
I take it you're not just talking about the 8.5-hour flight, 7 hours the other way around because of the jet stream.
I love the jet stream. It's my favourite thing.
You get to save an hour and a half. Amazing. But,
I think you're only saving 45 minutes, and you
I
lose
like to
it
tell
the other
myself it's an hour and a half.
Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, it's culturally far as well, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to go and love the systems, but find the people a bit disappointing. And I got there and I loved the people and found the systems really disappointing, like really archaic and clunky. And I thought, I've been to a university that's been around for 800 years. Your country has only been around for 300. How can you possibly be this old-fashioned? And so that culture shock I found very hard. And I did not really know that learning was amazing. And I think I let myself down a little bit by not appreciating that when I went to Harvard. So when I was at Oxford, I'd learned that I needed to work hard in order to pass exams, which was a new thought and a big one. But I hadn't got the idea that just learning is the point. And then you go and do a research degree, and if you just try and pass the exams, that doesn't really work because it's about something different. And so I found that really hard, and that was the big struggle for me in America.
It's a very, I think, in terms of like this kind of constitution of the elite, kind of going back to the theme that's been consistent there, what we mean by elite when we're trying to say, all right, some forms of education cater to the most academic kids, and we'll try and decouple that from financial elite in as much as it could ever be decoupled, which is of course hugely problematic. In the United States, the Ivy League universities are private institutions. I mean, even when I was at Penn, obviously you get a graduate stipend if you go to any graduate school in the States. So I didn't have to pay the fees. But undergraduate fees of the undergraduates I was teaching, even in the late 90s, were 25 grand a semester. It's an enormous amount of money, which of course is not the case here. And that has huge, I think, for me, pernicious effects on the entire kind of construction of those things. But
yeah,
I have to play the news soon, but yeah, your pithy thought on that before we take a break for the news and I come back and harass you about Taylor Swift.
I think that the money thing is really complicated. I think that the elite education is an opportunity to think harder, work harder, be cleverer, and that I think that we as a society should be embracing the opportunity to push the clever people as far as they possibly can, so that there's some chance that at some point they'll be useful to society. I think that the money thing, I think that money will always buy you things. That's kind of what money does. I think that we as a society, with a branch of government, I don't know if education really counts as that, but I'm a state employee. I think that my job is to try to create something that is so good that it's not worth going and spending money on something else. That if you can have
That's a nice way of
free
putting it, yeah.
education here, then why would you want to go to a private
So,
school?
like, I can't believe it's not butter, but for education.
Yeah, I'm going to put them all out of business.
All right, I'm gonna play the news. Everybody joining us just now, I'm talking to James Hanscom, principal of Harris Westminster Sixth Form, and this year the subject of one of those awful Daily Mail teacher outrage moments, which we'll be talking about when we come back. Martin B is saying, "I can't believe it's not eaten." That can be your tag. Just say it. Right, here we go. Here's the news again.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News with Gail Glenn. In England, a new study carried out by the Mayor of London's office has discovered that more than 3 million children attend schools in areas with toxic air pollution. It has also highlighted that 99% of Londoners live on streets which have shown dangerous air quality and are 4 times more likely to attend schools in areas with pollution levels above World Health Organization limits. A form of particulate air pollution, which is produced by vehicles, industry, and by burning wood and coal, has been found to be of significant danger. PM 2.5 has been found to be prevalent in schools attended by 3.1 million children. Research has shown that children in the most polluted areas had on average 5% less lung capacity, and that those exposed to the worst air pollution are more likely to be deprived Londoners and from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan...
I'm pausing this to tell James to stop making so much noise. Shush!
Khan said, "I'm doing everything in my power to stop young Londoners breathing air so filthy that it damages their lungs and causes thousands of premature deaths every year. This is why I'm expanding the ultra-low emission zone later this year. I want to make sure all London meets the World Health Organization limits for particulate matter. But I can't do it alone, and I want to work with government to achieve this goal." He added, "We can't sleepwalk from the health crisis of COVID back into complacency over the major impact of toxic air on everyone's health." In Scotland, the government has been accused of desperation for announcing talks with local authorities to deliver laptops and tablets to every school pupil. The Scottish Conservative education spokesman, Oliver Mundell, said, "Nicola Sturgeon made a huge song and dance about promising free laptops and devices to pupils during the election. It now appears these plans have barely got off the starting line." The SNP left thousands of pupils without access to devices during remote learning, but now has the cheek to pat themselves on the back for merely entering discussions with councils. Miss Somerville said, "Every child has the right to an education, and we believe that means an education supported and enhanced by technology. This is a vital aspect of an education system in the digital age, which was clearly demonstrated by the pandemic. This is a hugely ambitious programme of work that will build on efforts to tackle digital inclusion during the pandemic. These early talks with Scottish councils are a positive step towards delivering this commitment." This has been your daily education news briefing.
And we are back with James Hanscom.
Who is apparently too noisy.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you that basically when the news is playing, we can still pick up everything happening on the mic. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's terrifying.
But you were fine. You just rustled a bit, which I would
Okay.
expect from a purple spider busy enmeshing the world at the center of its web.
The web needed work.
Exactly. So, obviously, your wonderful book caught the attention. You did an interview with the Times, and then the Daily Mail, which exists in a purple spider itself, constantly seeking for a product to be outraged about in the world. A terrible purple spider rather than a good one. Found this article and turned it into a rather outraged thing about how you were an elite headmaster who, nonetheless, was philosophically inspired by Taylor Swift. I've got here head teacher James Hanscom's favorite Taylor Swift quotes. So I'd like you to justify them. First off, should have said quotation, shouldn't it? Yes, it should, Daily Mail.
Should. Yeah.
Spirited defiance. In mean, she tells bullies, someday I'll be living in a big old city, and all you're ever going to be is mean. Why is this an important philosophical quotation for you, James Hanscom?
I think that we all face challenges, and we all have privileges as well. And the question is what you do with those. And I love the juxtaposition of mean with Welcome to New York, which I imagine you're going to be quoting at me in a minute. And so mean is from her third album, which is very fun and definitely worth a listen. And it has lines like, your wildfire lies and your humiliation. You've pointed out my flaws again as if I didn't already see them. And it's these bullies making her life sad. And she says, someday I'm going to be living in a big old city, and all you're ever going to be is mean and a liar and pathetic. And I love that. I'm going to succeed despite anyone else. I can do this. It doesn't matter that there are people who are being snarky at me. I'm going to do my stuff anyway.
Swagger. She's going to swagger. Yeah.
And then she 2 albums later, she writes Welcome to New York. And Welcome to New York, it's been waiting for you. And there is this embracing of a cosmopolitan world that she had promised herself, and she's moved there a few months before she releases the album, because one of the things I love about Taylor Swift is right up until album 7 it's all autobiographical, and it's there, and it's life transforming, and it's everything that she'd promised herself, and I love that.
I love the fact as well that you're creating we're both kind of obsessed with storytelling. I can see we're not going to have time for you to talk about storytelling as narrative. It's going to force you to come on another time to talk about that. But yeah, you're constructing a narrative there. You've picked out the someday I'm going to be living in a big old city. And now 3 albums later, she is moving to the big old city, and it's all coming together, swagger and narrative style. You've also got being young means taking risks. Be careful about who you entrust with your heart. Is this some love and romance advice from the Purple Spider?
Yeah, it's difficult for me to give love and romance advice because A, I don't know much. B, I'm a purple spider. And C, nobody wants their head teacher to talk about sex. But
are you sure though?
Yes, I'm sure. Okay. So when we first did sex ed properly, we had a female teacher who was keen to deliver it, and we decided we needed a male teacher with them. And on the grounds that I wouldn't make anyone do anything that I'm not prepared to do myself, I put myself forward, and we did sex ed for this form tutor group. And it was the first one, so we did a survey afterwards, and their universal response was, we're really glad that you're doing sex ed. We think it's really important. We really appreciated what you're talking, but please, can we not have Mr. Hanscom in the room? So
I just love the idea of you informing their discussion with this is just like that moment when Galadriel did. I just think they should embrace it. The next thing I'm going to read you is accusations from the comment section on that.
Oh, that's fun. Okay, yeah. Go on.
Let's see. So, this is where the liberal-controlled education is going wrong. They should be teaching, not showing everyone who their crush is. The worship of celebrity culture should never interfere with children's education. We have the wrong people teaching our kids right from wrong.
Okay, well, yeah. So, I mean, maybe we do have the wrong people and somebody else wants to train as a teacher and take over the school. That's fine.
This person's a Welsh Canadian, so they obviously have a range of...
got limited prospects there. I mean, I think my response to some of that is, somebody saying on Twitter they can't hear me, but everyone says I'm too loud.
Can anybody else hear? No, no one said you were too loud, just too rustling.
Okay.
Everybody else hear James? Yeah, they can hear. Carry on.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so put your money where your mouth is if you think you can do it better. I think the important thing is that I quote from a wide range of sources. The assembly where I said that Taylor Swift was one of our greatest philosophers. That was a brilliant joke because I quoted from 4 other dead white men. And had her at the beginning and didn't say who she was, just read out the quote deadpan. And so
very nice.
we had all the students nudging each other and saying, hang on, I think I recognise that one. And at the end, they come up to you and they go, was that Taylor Swift? You go, yes, it was. And they go, yes! And it's important to recognise that you don't have to be a dead white man to be right and interesting. I mean, some of them are, some of them aren't. And some of other people are and some of other people aren't. And this cross-referencing and this magpie approach to culture, I think, is very important. And particularly in a school like ours, where we have such a broad range of cultures coming into the school. We are very much a melting pot of all of the people across London coming together to learn and to challenge.
And that idea of the magpie approach and the cabinet of curiosities. I mean, I don't, just for any listeners who don't know what a cabinet of curiosities is, they're obviously, they kind of become extremely popular in the 17th century and then the 18th century. By the 19th century, they've turned into sort of Barnum and Bailey type freak shows. It's human oddities, scientific curiosities, shells and exciting things found around the world. The fattest man in Lancaster and his picture of his trousers. I love him. I studied him for a while. Amazing man. And Mary Toft, the woman who gave birth to rabbits. She didn't, but she managed to persuade people. So it's just this relentless curiosity for the most nonsensical tiny things, but also for, here is a microscope, but all jumbled together as being worthy of attention, which really is what you're saying about, philosophy and Taylor Swift and Descartes, along with, works for me. Seems the human brain has deteriorated somewhat since the Bard was alive.
Well, I quote Shakespeare as well. More strange than true. I never can believe these antique fables nor these fairy toys. I think that there's a lot to be said about a lot of things. I've done an assembly on As You Like It and how
that's the worst play.
No, it isn't, because Hamlet is the worst play.
Well, that's true. It's the worst comedy.
Well, I interesting that you think this, because I think that they are the same story. I think that you've got Hamlet happening inside the castle, and then outside in the woodlands, whilst all of that very claustrophobic politics is happening, you have Orlando and Rosalind falling in love.
And what I really love, the bit I do adore about Hamlet, is the way you can see the sort of like regicidal impulses of the English emerging there, where basically the crowd exists throughout the play to turn up the gate sometimes and go, we want to kill Hamlet. Now we want to kill, we like Laertes, blah. They clearly, they're just, and then they'll go off back to the woods again to do some bad poetry about
it's terrible poetry. Terrible poetry. I love the terrible poetry.
Rosalind.
But that's the point. So James Shapiro is great on this, and he says that in the other comedies, what you have is a young man and a young woman who are clearly going to fall in love, but there's some barrier between them, whether it's a grumpy father or a class barrier. The barrier between Rosalind and Orlando is that Orlando is a jackass. There's nothing else to stop them to come together. It's just that he is grossly inadequate as a human being and needs to grow up.
Okay.
Which is the story of my life. So well, I don't know. Let's go to the next comment. You're enjoying this, aren't you?
I am very much. He's thinking with his diddling kit, which I have to say, diddling kit is not even a phrase I've heard before. That person's invented it just for you.
Okay, that's nice.
Do you feel you are romantically drawn to Ms. Swift, and that's what you're being accused of throughout the comments, by the way?
No, I don't.
I love it that you even bothered answering that. Thank you.
My daughter really likes Taylor Swift, and in 2014, which is when the school started, Taylor Swift released 1989, and my daughter got it as a Christmas present, and we listened to it incessantly as a result. And so my engagement with youth is shaped by my children. Is anyone surprised by that? No. Does anyone really want to come and accuse me of making that sexual? They probably do. They read the Daily Mail, right?
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So, I think it's offensive nonsense.
I agree. And but do your children cringe at your quoting of the Taylor and such? Are you a cringe dad? Are you a cool dad? Are you outside of such categories?
I all of the things. I don't think I'm a cool dad. I don't think I've ever been cool. I think that my daughters. I think I am who I am, which is kind of the most I could hope for, really. Yes, obviously they know I'm unstoppable in my terrible jokes and my ruthless quotation of Petra. They're actually glad when I'm quoting Taylor Swift because I'm not quoting Thomas Hardy. So,
which is your go-to Thomas Hardy to quote?
Afterwards, when the present has locked its postern against my tremulous stay, and the May month flaps its glad green leaves like wings, delicate filmed as new spun silk. Will the neighbours say he was a man that used to notice such things?
That's beautiful. Yeah, my one's always I always go to the most miserable one, which I remember being struck to near paralysis by the astonishing power of in class, which is the we stood by the pond that summer's day and the sun was white as though chidden by God. The smile on your mouth was the deadest thing, alive enough to have strength to die. Like, oh, just beautiful. And yeah, you could have said it to music. Right, we only have 3 minutes left. I need to play a word from our sponsors, so I'm going to wrap up. We didn't have time for me to make you complete Taylor Swift lyrics. Can you give our listeners a single piece of Swiftian lyrical wisdom, and one piece of Swiftian lyrical wisdom, and one perfect line from poetry that you think will curiously enrich their day?
Okay, so for Taylor Swift, we have Back to December. This is me swallowing my pride, standing in front of you saying I'm sorry for that night. And the adult switch there of her being grown up enough to say I'm sorry to somebody she's hurt. And the perfect line from poetry is Snow by McIntosh. And world is crazier and more of it than we think, incorrigibly plural. I peel and portion the tangerine and spit the pips and feel the drunkenness of things being various.
Oh, that's absolutely glorious. Please tweet that at once so that I can share it widely. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
It has. Excellent. Right, so I think you can just hang up, but otherwise you have to be quiet during the advertising. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. Okay, bye.
Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club.
All right, thank you for listening, everyone, and I will see you next week. If you're teaching in England, you have only got 2 weeks left. Let's make the most of them, and I'll see you next week.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.